Hi, I'm Kevin Chung from San Francisco and now also based in Culver City. And I still work as a portfolio strategist for a company called Autodesk, which is in the technology sector and mainly based in San Francisco. So after completing the core portion of FEMBA, and I had originally signed up as a hybrid student, but actually went more on class in person on Saturdays. And I'll tell you more about how that experience was. How I really felt after core has been finished is that a lot of what I personally consider to be business mysteries, in other words, you would read about maybe what a business has been doing to compete in a certain area, or their stock price had suddenly jumped as a result of some type of investor decision or behavior. These are things that I previously just read about and digest it and say, well, someone out there knows a little bit more than me about this. But I think after taking a lot of our core classes and accounting and strategy, these really help to now paint a better picture when I read these articles or information about companies for me to say, hey, I actually understand what's going on here, why, folks made the certain decisions that they made. And more importantly, maybe there actually is a better way of doing what they had actually done now that we have more knowledge about, again, a lot of these fundamental business practices that someone like me had been exposed to, but not necessarily familiar with behind the why. So that alone has really been rewarding to me. Another really rewarding piece, and something that I feel really, really happy about, is the fact that as a class for us in the year, the graduation year of 2023, we just finally had the first quarter where our classes have been in person and masked, but still, of course, in person, and really to be able to get that in-person instruction on campus, in Anderson facilities, something that we've been hoping for as a class. The fact that it's been finally realized, that was really quite another, rewarding experience for us, and in particular for me too, given that my first priority going into business school was to really network as much as possible. Now, that being said, of course, there's some drawbacks to that, which is in addition to Zoom work and Zoom school, there was also in-person elements of the in-person school experience. And that, of course, made some time management adjustments that we certainly weren't used to going in. And I'd say the class of 2024 was probably better prepared than even we were, because we were used to that Zoom environment, but now we were really starting to, get ourselves immersed on campus. So not really sugarcoating any of that. I think that was quite an adjustment for us, and it was almost as if we had become freshmen once again in year two. But again, we survived. We were able to handle it quite well as a class, and more importantly, we finally got the networking piece that I think we've been waiting for all this time. So that was something that I felt really good about at the end of this core experience. Some of the main takeaways from core have been, first of all, related more on the non-academic side, which is related to networking and the social experience that I feel like I really signed up for at UCLA. And of course, the Zoom experience was a muted version of what I feel would have been much more an accelerated networking process had it been in person. But I think for myself, and I think more advice in case we do go back into a Zoom world, I think it's the networking is what you make of it. And I really was able to join in on as many conversations, Zoom breakout rooms, Zoom networking right in the very beginning. And eventually, as things transitioned into in person, what was really cool was I met a lot of people already right from the Zoom. So it was really easy to start connecting with people in person. And then ultimately, it was the in person connections that made this program even more rewarding in the end. So I feel like I've grown in that sense, to make finally LA feel like a, a home for me. And this is something that I went into the program wanting to do, and I feel like I have been able to achieve that, even as I still have half of the program left to complete. The other side of the takeaway really is more academic. And the way I've really grown here is in being able to just apply a lot of the different learnings into everyday life. And I can give a few great examples. One is when you stand in line at a restaurant or a bakery or cafe. Once you take operations, it's really hard for you not to start wondering, well, what's the cycle time of each customer? What's the average length of the queue? Why is this coffee order taking forever? These are things, of course, we experience every day, but now there's some mathematics and some theory behind those experiences that make you think, well, why does it have to be this way, or how can it improve? Other ways too is, when you see maybe a company's profit reports, their 10K, things that are available to you when you research companies, specific things like how much of it is deferred revenue, how much do they have in assets, right? These are things that to me I had absolutely no idea about before I took accounting, but now these are a lot more familiar concepts to me. And strategy was really one of my favorite personal subjects from the MBA experience here. And what I love about strategy is you start to really observe, companies making certain decisions. Let's say a large telecom corporation buys a subsidiary in some very seemingly unrelated industry. Well, maybe some execs over at this company had a strategic reason behind why they may have done it. Or maybe this actually was a very nonsensical strategic decision. So these are things that strategy class really helped me to better understand. And now I can start thinking, on my own terms about, well, was that acquisition a smart move? And all of this has really made for a very rewarding core experience. And again, these are the main takeaways that I had from the program. Moving into my electives now, some of the things I'm looking forward to next are a few different courses that I'll be taking this coming quarter. So one is a special topics course called Venture Capital Strategy. And the reason why I'm really interested in this one is I always love learning about what happens at the other side of the table. So, as someone who has pitched to investors before and has got money, things like that, I think it'll be really interesting, and I've always been curious to learn what happens on the other side. Why do VCs make the decisions they do on deciding who they invest in? So I think that's going to be really a very interesting one, just a 2-unit course. And forecasting is another elective that I've signed up for. And I think forecasting is something just very interesting, especially though during these COVID times. And one of the books that we're actually going to be reading as part of the course, which I want to present, is Shutdown: How COVID Shook the World's Economy. So this book is obviously just available at a Barnes and Noble or anywhere else, but I do think you can get a sense of how we'll be partaking in some interesting forecasting models, trying to predict what will happen to the world's various economies as a result of change that may be happening or trends that we've experienced in the past. And in terms of how my schedule will be changing, so as I mentioned, I previously signed up for FEMBA as a hybrid, being based in the Bay Area. But as I started to realize that my workplace was flexible, and I really want to thank my supportive manager and team for enabling me to certainly be as flexible as possible, I went more towards a Saturday schedule in person at Anderson. And now with electives, I'm actually shifting over to doing classes that are happening Tuesday and Thursday evenings. So this will be a shift for me. And at FEMBA, there's mainly 2 different segments, at least for the in-person folks. There's the Saturday, all-day folk, and then the Tuesday, Thursday evenings. So I'm now doing what my colleagues who have previously been in Tuesday, Thursdays have been doing all this time. And so I think it'll be an interesting shift for me. Certainly have to leave out the door to take the 405 a little bit earlier than I would have wanted compared to Saturday mornings. But I think it is a welcome change. Getting weekends back personally was something that I wanted to do for the next phase of my FEMBA experience. I'm pleased to continue to be a voice of FEMBA. And if I were to repeat core again, the advice I would give myself would be to keep creating goals each quarter, mini goals that are aligned to the ultimate end goal that I have for graduation in 2023. And yes, your end goal may change and these sub goals may change, but at least to have that answer for why you're here. And I know all of us are in or interested in taking an MBA program, for reasons that, as I mentioned earlier, these reasons may change, or you may not even know in particular, but at least make one particular specific choice and ride that, because these small problems and small annoyances and small things will always get in the way, I think, when you pursue a degree, and in particular for the FEMBA program and for the MBA experience, there's the great anxieties come back. You start comparing test scores and you start reading assignments that seemingly have no end, and you ask yourself, well, why and what is this for? Does this make any sense in my life? So I would say, and for me, as I've now finished core, a lot of those what ifs are now suddenly ahas, and they start to make more sense in terms of how they adjust to my end goal, which is to start another company at graduation, or maybe even beyond that, after meeting folks who may be interested in doing so. So I think by having these goals in mind, it keeps you less bothered by those small annoyances and those things that may get in the way of your everyday progress. Because if you know that, well, I'm here, for instance, for networking and to start a business and to do other things down the road, well, do the grades really matter for me? And I'm not talking about, of course, don't fail out of the program. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is, is the difference between that A minus or B plus, is that really something that really matters to you? And for some it does, because there's career related reasons to have that type of focus and attention on grades. For me, it's more to network and find new entrepreneurial opportunities. So this is just an example that I'm trying to be very transparent about, which is, your own goals will keep you steadfast and less focused on what other MBA students are doing in your program, so that you can continue to do what you need to do best, and finish the program in the way you intended, to make sure that you achieve your own goals. So get out there, enjoy the experience, meet new people, learn more about the world, and let those goals help drive that conversation and that drive those thoughts that you have along the way. So with that in mind, thank you so much, and hope to see you all soon.